So there was so much guidance in that whole system that for us, there was no doubt that we were doing the right thing. There was provision when we needed a house to do ceremonies. It came like that, like a super big house for almost no money. It was almost impossible. Like the things that you can experience with God, I also experienced there. But of course, it was an exchange that I was doing with the demonic realm, and I didn't know that. And so later they came to collect.
One of the biggest assumptions that people make today is that if they have a spiritual experience that feels real, is powerful, or is even hopeful, that it's from God. But what if the real danger isn't fake experiences, but real ones pointing in the wrong direction?
And today we're having an interview with Mitchell Havilar. He is a former shaman who's had years of experience diving deep in the unseen realm. He's had real encounters, and he genuinely believed that as a shaman, he was helping people.
Mitchell has since come to the Lord and is now a follower of Christ. We were connected with him through our friend, IMB missionary, Travis Burkhalter. He was on one of our previous episodes and said, you really need to talk to him about his experiences.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to be having part 1 of a 2-part conversation.
So, Mitchell, thank you so much for coming on and being on the show.
Yeah. And just to kick us off, Mitchell, for some of our listeners who may not know what shamanism is, or I know you dealt with specifically ayahuasca, which is, I know, a foreign word maybe to a lot of people. Can you kind of go into depth before you start? Not depth, but just kind of go through what those things are and before you jump into your story.
Yeah, sure. So a shaman is a person that is in the, like, basically it's a person that is with one foot in the natural and with one foot in the spiritual. And so there are different levels of shamanism, but what you're doing is that you are somehow communicating with the spiritual realm. Sometimes you even go into the spiritual realm, you receive information or you change things and you bring that back here to bring a change in the natural. And so there are different levels, and shamanism is with ayahuasca is like a deeper level. There they make like a drink, like a potion, and they consume it, and that opens up the spiritual realm in you. So you are in the spiritual realm, it's in you, it goes through a lot of dimensions. And so you when you drink it, you enter into a journey and you are gone for a few hours, and in that world everything is possible.
Wow. So when you say just like this, you're in the spiritual realm and the spiritual realm is in you, what do you mean by like the spiritual realm is in you?
It's what I mean is that when you drink the medicine, well, it's not a medicine, but that's how we called it. You open up something inside of you, so everything in your body changes. So you can taste colors, you can see sound, like all of this stuff is mixing and blurring. And because I was a shaman and I trained for longer, it was possible for me to be in my body but also on different locations at the same time, or I could go out of my body into someone else that was across the country or something. So it's like a multidimensional way of being.
Okay. Like when you say go into someone else, is that like astral projection? Is that kind of...
Yeah, but astral projection is a different kind of technique. So what I could do, for instance, was that I could somehow travel like that and be in somebody's body, and then the experiences of that person came into my body. So I could go through their traumatic experiences and in that way kind of cleanse it, or I thought that I was cleansing it. But mostly I was just experiencing the things that they experienced. And then later, and then I would call them and then I would tell them all the experiences that I had, and they would confirm that they actually had those experiences. So, yeah.
Okay.
So you were feeling like you were helping in some way.
In that time, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought.
Yeah. So, I mean, just moving on with the conversation, just go ahead and just start by just sharing some of your story of like how you became a shaman and just kind of what led you out of that.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, it started a long time ago. I was studying at the Academy of Theater. I was becoming an actor. I was already acting in television series, and was the last few years, I think the last year of my study. And I was at the apartment of my father. I was completely alone. There was nothing to trigger this event, but somehow, out of the blue, I sat there and a voice spoke to me, and it was outside of my body. So it was an audible voice, and it said pineal gland with a deep voice. It was like pineal gland. And at the same time, I saw a few visions of like people in general that are communicating with something spiritual and kind of receiving an answer back. So I saw like a Hindu person sitting in meditation and speaking. I saw a Christian prayer and receiving answer. I saw a Muslim bowing down and receiving. So everything was about a spiritual practice, communicating with something and then receiving like an answer back. And that were the visions that I had. But that sound, that the voice, I was in shock because of that, because I never heard an audible voice. And so it was pretty scary. But I was like, okay, what even is this word like pineal gland, I was like, I don't know it. So I just Googled it. And then when I was Googling it, it explained that the pineal gland is actually like a little gland on like beneath your brain. And they call it the third eye. So it's the all-seeing eye. And even that, I didn't really know. I was not into spiritual practices at all. I was just studying. But the strange thing is that when I was reading all of these posts or things on Google, it was as if I understood what was written in a deeper way. So I kind of knew without knowing what it was about. And I knew as if it was like a download, like this is something that I'm going to open. And so I just sit down and I started doing meditations. And also that was something I kind of knew exactly what to do. So I read it a little bit, but I also knew it as if there was like a spiritual download. And so from that moment on, I think for a month, I just sat in meditations. I opened my chakras and I did kind of mantras and things, like very specific mantra. And then one day it kind of just popped open. And then actually things changed inside of my body. It was as if there was like a veil lifted and as if I could see things that I never could see before. And also my senses changed. But what mostly was very crazy was that when I was meeting people, I could hear their thoughts. Or if I met someone, I knew everything that happened with those people before. So I received information that I was not supposed to be able to receive. And that blew my mind. And that was a very, very, strange period in my life. I thought I was becoming crazy, actually. And I was like, okay, how can I test what is happening? Maybe I am becoming crazy. And so one of the things that was, what was very clear to me was that the main point of opening these chakras in this third eye was that I could communicate with spirit. That was also the visions that I saw.
Let me ask you a question real quick. You said it a couple of times, chakra. What is that?
So chakras is something that comes from the Hindu tradition, and it refers to energy centers that are in the body, and they are related to particular areas of our life. And so it's actually a system, and it does exist, but it is not for humans to tap into. So it's information that we gained through spiritual entities illegally, and now we try to hijack it. So it is something that God placed in our body, but not because he wants us to know or to work with it. Just like you have a liver, yes, you have it, but it's not supposed that you need to hijack it.
Just playing off something you said there, because we've talked about this in previous episodes. But we said, like, it's knowledge that we've gained illegally. We've talked about through the Genesis 6 event and when the Watchers came down, on Earth and gave information to. I think it's even talked about it gave them herbs and gave them roots and plants. And is that what you're kind of referring to, where this knowledge came from, or?
Yeah. So the Lord explained it a little bit to me, but I also was able to read like the book of Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
and the Bible refers to it, but it's not a biblical proof. But yeah, what is written in Enoch, that is what occurred.
Okay.
Yeah. So, keep going.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt your story there, but I probably threw you off track.
No worries. All questions are welcome.
Yeah.
So the thing that I really know that was what I was supposed to do was like starting to communicate with spirit. And I was very skeptical because I didn't grow up in church. I didn't know God. I didn't had any spiritual friends, spiritual practices. I didn't know anything about anything at all. So as a skeptical person, I was like, okay, so if this realm of spirit exists, then it needs to prove itself to me. Because I like to learn through experience instead of knowledge. So I was like, okay, I need to have experiences. And so what I did is that I made like a little adventure for myself, and I took a period of time, like 30 days. And every morning I just sat and I thought of a question, and then I asked the question to the spirit or the universe. And then I gave it the time to answer it back to me. It's like to give me the answer. And so I did that. And then every day answers came. And in the continuing of those days, I started to, how can I explain that? I started to change my questions so that I could really find out, like, is this a coincidence that is happening? Is it me becoming crazy? Can I have like validation of other people that also can acknowledge that this is happening? I was really testing the spirits.
Yeah.
But for 30 days, I received answers on every question. I received answers when I asked for money.
Wow.
I even did a challenge because I asked for items and stuff like that, and I received those things in the same day.
When you were talking about, you're talking to the spirits now from your perspective in Christ, what do you think it is that you were like talking to and receiving answers from?
So the particular spirit, I don't know, but it was not God. I think that at the moment that this voice came, and it's also a little bit the confirmation that I had from like walking with Christ, is that somehow there was like a legal right from my ancestors and like rituals and things that happened in like with the ancestors, and that gave the spiritual realm a legal right to enter into my life. Like they had a claim on me. I was like the next in line to step into whatever they already done. They made covenants. And so this covenant came and wanted to continue the relationship. And so this is not these are like higher principalities. These are not the most common demonic entities that you have when you are demonized or something. So the particular, later in time I saw in the spirit when I was with Christ, particular entities and gods and stuff like that, like the sons of God.
Yeah.
But in that time I didn't know. I really didn't know. But it was interesting that when I received answers from people, they kind of channeled that information too. So when I was in the supermarket and someone was sending with their chicken, they could just talk to the chicken and give me the answer at the same time of the question that I asked in the morning. And then later, because I also could receive information, that energy, when you are like tapping into information, I could also feel that when those people were receiving that. And so in retrospective, I started to try to pinpoint, like, how is it possible that these people could be like a channel for these spirits? And then I could see that mostly all of the times that I could remember, these people were under the influence of drugs. They were deeply in sin. They're like, so I could see, they are just being used. They are overtaken by these enemies of the enemies. Yeah, it's an enemy, but these demons.
Right.
Yeah.
And they don't even know it.
Yeah. And so the enemy was using them because they already had, influence. And so I'm able to use that as confirmation for you that, hey, like, listen to me, it's real.
Yeah. And that's what happened in those 30 days. So because it was 30 days and they could confirm every question, they created a foundation that I knew, okay, this exists. There is communication. They are even helping me in the way that they were answering my question that felt like help. So there was trust. And I was like, okay, this is a relationship. And if this is possible, then why should I go back to a regular life where I had so many questions and nobody was there to answer me? So yeah, that's the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like one of the strategies, like a lot of times we think of demonic forces or these things, and it's obvious the attacks that they have against us. But in this way, it seems like, they're trying to bring good things to you, like to try to get you comfortable with them or on their side, I guess.
Yeah. So I guess you were feeling like this was a good thing at the time, and this is something that you were supposed to do somehow.
Yeah, so nobody ever came to me and told me about Jesus. So I didn't know the truth. I didn't know what was the right way. And so when I was experiencing this, I was open to everything, whether you call it God or you call it great spirit or universe. For me, it was all felt like all the same. There is something and it wants to help me. And I was like, I need help in my life. And and so it was not me reaching out. But also in retrospect, I can see that there was a lot of brokenness in me, in my family, how I grew up. And so I already was broken. I already was vulnerable. I already had a lot of questions. I was in need of help. And so when that opportunity came, they took it and they were like, hey, we're going to use this guy.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So then, if it sounds like everything was going well, you being a shaman and you helping people, or at least how you felt, what changed? What happened?
Yeah, so then we need to continue the story.
Yeah.
So after I had this relationship and I know that I could communicate with spirit, I started to just talk with them and ask them, okay, how should I live my life? And they pointed me to shamanism. And so I came into a ceremony with ayahuasca because of them. And in that ceremony, it was a very deep ceremony. But I had a big pain in my back. When I was sitting, it was not comfortable. When I was laying down, it hurted, and it was there all the time. And so in that ceremony, I asked that question to the spirits behind ayahuasca, like, what is going on? And eventually they took me in a very deep journey. And they kind of showed me that it had to do with me trying to be strong when I was supposed to be vulnerable. And this changed everything in me. So the pain in my back went away after that ceremony. And I was learning about vulnerability and the power of that. And I was super impressed by that was possible. And it's like it was a very big ceremony, so I will not go in depth, but I was longing for something that could answer the questions that I had because I didn't find that in my surroundings. And that opened the path of shamanism. So in very short, I did ceremony after ceremony. And then I felt like, okay, this is really the thing that I feel called to do. I went to Peru a couple of times. I did dietas. So the dieta is like a deep journey with plant spirits to really become a shaman. So it's like a shamanic training. I went into the jungle, into the mountains. I did a very long training. And after a couple of years of training and being in those realms all the time, I received kind of the blessing from the spiritual realm to become a shaman myself. And then I started having ceremonies. And that also, I did it for a few years and it kind of, it went very, very well. And also there, it's so strange, but me and my wife, she was then not my wife, but now she's my wife. We were both shamans and we were so guided. So we knew on Tuesday what was going to happen on Saturday. We could see that in dreams, in the spirit, we would perceive the information. So there was so much guidance in that whole system that for us, there was no doubt that we were doing the right thing. There was provision when we needed a house to do ceremonies. It came like that, like a super big house for almost no money. It was almost impossible. Like the things that you can experience with God, I also experienced there. But of course, it was an exchange that I was doing with the demonic realm, and I didn't know that. And so later they came to collect. And so after a few years of being a shaman, me and my wife had like a calling to go to Guatemala. So we closed our place in the Netherlands and we went on a journey to go to Guatemala and to open up a retreat center there. And first we went to a few countries and then we entered into Peru just to train and to work deeper with other kind of plants called Wachuma. And so while being there, everything went sideways. So what happened is that my wife was very gifted in communicating with spirit without taking any medicine at all. And so those spirits were explaining to us that we would enter a deeper level of shamanism, so like an upgrade, and that my wife needed to go through some kind of practices and operations, or that would be like something happening to do that upgrade. So she needed to sit in particular meditations, and in those meditations, all her energy would go up, like all over around her body, and so the energy would shoot up, and that would change something very deep in the core of what she was experiencing. And then one day we had a conversation about incarnation. Do you know about incarnation?
I know about Christ's incarnation, but I'm not sure what you're.
So
Yeah.
in I think it's Hinduism, they believe that you incarnate again and again and again. So you have like,
Reincarnation.
reincarnation.
Yes, there we go.
I'm not from America. I don't
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
So reincarnation. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So we had a conversation about that because we kind of believed that we would come back because we thought that we had a lot of experiences of previous lives. And somehow that day when we were talking about that, something snapped inside of my wife because she just couldn't handle needing to come back to this earth. And so something like she could actually feel something like pop in her head, and she could feel all of her energy leaving her body. And so I needed to bring her outside, and I put her on the ground and I tried to massage her legs because her legs were not working anymore. And so that was happening, but it became night, it became dark, and we needed to go inside. And then I put her into the bed and I massaged her again. And then I was like, okay, let's go to sleep and hopefully tomorrow you will feel better. We didn't know what was going on. But in that night, I was sleeping. And what happened with her was that she could feel how her energy like was leaving her body. So she could feel herself going out of her body and as if she was dying. And she was very afraid, and she didn't dare to wake me up because she thought if I move, if I make a sound, it's done. I'm dead. So there was a lot of fear. But in her mind, she was praying all the time to God for help because we were always praying. Because even as shamans, I thought that I was helping God. So that's very strange. But that was my secret motive of operandi. Like I bring people to God. That's what I believed then. So she was praying to God, and she was talking with God about all of the things that she still wanted to do, that she wanted to marry me and have kids. And somehow in that experience, alien beings entered into the room, and because of that popping in her head and those meditations, her vision was completely open. So she could see in the spirit while also seeing in the natural without any medicine or without anything at all. Just as you can see my flesh, she could see those beings. So it's not like as if you see a vision or really visible.
So let me.
Alien.
I'll ask you.
Yes.
You mentioned alien beings. What do you think? I mean, are you talking like you thinking extraterrestrials from other planets? Are you thinking are aliens as in demonic entities? What is your kind of thought process there?
Yeah, for me, alien beings are demonic entities.
Okay.
There are different kind of demonic entities, and alien beings. There are different kinds of them.
Got it.
And I met them also in ceremonies in the spirit. I also saw spaceships when I was in Peru in the sky for like almost an hour. So they come and they interfere with humans, and they also give information, just like the Watchers.
Okay.
Yeah. So she could see those aliens coming into the room, And what happened is that those aliens, they brought back her soul into her body. And then they made sure that she was good again and calm. And so she started to trust those aliens because she prayed and asked for help. And then the aliens came to help her. And so she thought, oh, okay, God has sent these beings to help me so that I can survive. And that also brought the trust. But that's where it went wrong, because from that moment on, these alien beings came every day and they started to do these upgrades on her body. So they did like operations, and this took in total like 1.5 months.
So are you talking
almost
like physical upgrades, like physical things to her body then?
Yes, but I could be in the room and I couldn't see it, but she could see it.
Yeah.
And she could feel what was happening. So there were moments that her arm was not working, or her legs didn't work, or her heart was stopping, and she could all feel that. But she could also see what was happening. And the most that I could see, because in the first period I was not a lot in that room, but after a while I was like, hey, I want to know what's going on. And so I sat in the room myself and I started to try to tune into the spirit. But I could see just in the room like little blue lights like shooting through the room. So I could see that something was happening, but I couldn't see the same as she could see. But so you had the physical operations, and then they were talking a lot about who she was, where she came from, what her purpose was on Earth, and what happened in the past, and what needed to be set right. And that was a story they were telling, and they were like playing chess, like with information they already gave us in all the years before in shamanism. So they really organized a strategy for this moment to happen. So because it was already a foundation in our belief system, they could outplay that scenario. And what happened is that in that scenario, it's such a crazy story. It's very difficult to explain. But a lot of fear came into that scenario that they were talking about, spiritual beings that we had like a war with, and so we're not safe everywhere we're being. So fear came in, and we tried to protect ourselves. So I was doing all kinds of shamanic things to protect us. And what happened is that we became exhausted. I was day and night trying to do protection things around the house. She was dealing with these operations, and it took 1.5 months, almost no food, no sleep, no nothing. And then somehow there came a moment in time, a night, that because of these stories, we thought that we needed to go away from Peru and to a different country because it wouldn't be safe because of the spiritual war. Oh, it sounds so ridiculous, but because of the spiritual war, we needed to go to a different country.
I want to ask you a question real quick. It's just because we're connecting things that we've talked about and even other episodes that we've had. So we talked about territorial powers that are over different areas. So were you thinking like if you left Peru, you were getting away from something that was territorially over the Peruvian area, which is why going somewhere else would kind of relieve that spiritual battle? Or I don't know.
Were you aware of that?
Yeah, like my wife, she could see like a spiritual army standing outside. She could also see through walls at that moment in time. She could just see in the spirit. So she could see like an army. And the story that they told, it was as if like maybe she need to come on the podcast so she can handle it well.
Yeah.
Especially this moment in the time, because for me it's a blur. But there was like a story about that she had a previous life where she was a kind of an entity, like an alien herself. And she had all kind of screens around her, and on those screens were people, and she kind of could manipulate those people's thoughts, actions from a distance. So it's actually what the demons are doing, but the story that they were telling that she did that. And so there was karma, and so there was a price that needed to be paid, and that there still were entities around in the now that were there in the past, and they still wanted to, what's the word when you want to, like revenge? No, they wanted to have revenge. Yeah. So that was the story. And she could see those armies standing outside. And it's good to say that the baseline for this is that when you are a shaman, you go into other dimensions and you see so many things that everything is optional for you. So for me right now, if I listen to it, I'm like, okay, this guy needs to be crazy. But if you have all those experiences and you've seen all of these entities and you've been in these dimensions and you had deep levels of training of occult information that you are not supposed to know, then everything is optional in your mind. So in that night, she woke me up and she said, tomorrow we are going to fly. But the spirits are telling me, like the aliens are telling me that I am too weak. And if I will fly right now, I'm going to die in the plane. But they are also telling that if I stay because of the spiritual war, I'm also going to die. So there's only two solutions, which is one solution. I'm going to die. And when she said that to me, that information, something snapped into my mind because I was exhausted. They were doing these flippings, like you can do this. Oh no, it's not possible anymore. Now we're gonna try that. No, door closed. They were doing that all the time, really to make us mad. And so I became mad at that moment in time. Something snapped and I was like, oh no, please, no. And somehow when I came back, like when my soul kind of came back from that experience, like it's a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
We were sitting there and I was like, okay, so you are going to die. And she was like, yeah. And she was very weak. And I remember that these spirits were talking about dimensions that they could create and that you could enter those dimensions. So I asked her, like, what is going to happen to you then? And she had said, like, they are going to take me, my soul, and they bring me into that dimension and I will live on there. But my body will stay here. And physically, I'm going to die. And so I then, at that moment in time, because I knew, like backing up in the story, that I was also testing these spirits all of the time. Because a lot of times there was information that was correct, but there were also hints to me that I was discerning like something is off. Because when it's about fear or when it's about these things, I don't believe that is God. And so I was testing these spirits whether it's true or not. But the difficulty was that the information that my woman received out of the spirit was also very, very true, or could be true, and was very deep. So I know my wife and she's very intelligent, but like that kind of information she cannot bring out.
Right.
So at that moment in time, I thought maybe she's going to die. And then I also don't want to live anymore because what do I have here on this earth? If this earth is so complicated, I don't want to be here. And she's my wife, so I want to be with you. And in the other part of my mind, I was like, okay, if this is all fake, then maybe this is the moment that I can say checkmate to them. So I asked them, is it possible that I'm also going to, that they also can let me die and bring me into that realm with you? And the alien beings were like, yes, that's possible. Let us reach that. And so we made a deal with them. And so I asked them like, okay, how long is it going to take for us to die, this process? And it was, I'd say 2 hours. I don't know the exact time anymore, but it was a short period. So we laid on the bed and this process of dying started to happen. And this is very smart of the demons because we needed to revoke all kind of things that were from us. So I needed to say, I give away my soul, or I take absence of my dreams, or like everything that I have, I gave to them. And that's what they want to have, of course. Covenants and
Agreements.
so after 2 hours or something, nothing was happening. And then they were like, oh, it's just going to take a little bit longer. And so it was like 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. And in the meantime, I was trying to communicate with God. I was asking him, like, can you reveal yourself? Like, is this true? And I was trying to test these spirits. But my wife, at the same time, she could see everything. She could see her soul and parts of her being placed into spaceships. She could see her own funeral. She could hear the music that would be played there. And so it was very real to her.
Let me ask you.
After
I'm just jumping in real quick. I know that you said that you were praying to God. So, but you didn't know Christ obviously at this point. So, but you did have a concept of, what was your concept of God that you were praying to, or?
So yeah, in my perspective as a shaman, I had a consciousness of God. I was like, okay, God exists, and then underneath God are all kind of beings. That's what I thought, that have godly power. So what we call right now the principalities.
Yeah.
I believed in that, but I thought that they were benevolent spirits, so they were good. And so I believed in Shiva and Shakti and Hanuman and Ganesha, and in the Egyptian gods, Isis and Ra and Horus. But I also believed in Jesus and Maria and Joseph and angels, and because in the spirit I could all see those entities. I had experiences with all of them. And the strange thing, and this is very interesting, is that all this time as a shaman, in the last periods of in the last years, I always had a vision, and I only know now what the vision is. And that was that I always saw myself as if I was like walking into a very dark cave, and there were like a lot of like hallways, and in the hallways were like monsters. And I knew it was my job to go through every hallway and look every monster in the eyes. And I knew that outside of the cave was somebody, and I didn't know who it was, and he was guiding me. And it was my job to go through every hallway, look every monster in the eye. And if I would hit the last wall, then the being that was outside would call me back. And then everything would be good. And now I know that was Jesus. And I already knew that as a shaman, but I couldn't see that it was Jesus because I had a veil over my eyes.
Wow.
So Jesus was always there. He always used everything that happened to me for his good. But in that moment in time, I had a covenant with demons. So
Yeah.
I gave my rights away. But yeah, Jesus is amazing. He saved me.
So when you're praying with your wife, or like praying for your wife or for you guys in the situation you're talking about, then even though you might not have had the full concept of who God really is, you feel like that you might have been praying to him in this moment, or?
I believe that he heard me, and my wife, she grew up as a Christian or like in church, so she had a legal right to him in a way. And I was baptized like Catholicism baptism, but I had no relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the way to God is through Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know what the relationship was, but I believe that it was God. And I also believe that he was there and he was still helping me.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's good.
But the demonic also had full legal right to my life. So it was like a mix of, and it was a mess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So what happened when we were in the bed?
Yeah.
And after like 10 hours or something, what happened is that we didn't die. And I gave them all the time and I gave them all the rights to kill me. And even though they claimed that they had the power, they couldn't.
This is where we're going to pause, not because this is the end of the story, but because this is the turning point in the story. Everything we've been talking about up to this point has been based on real experiences, but real experiences that were founded in deception.
If you found this episode helpful, please like and subscribe to the podcast so you can find part 2 a lot easier and you can help others find part 2 as well. And if you know anybody who's interested in New Age or curious about spirituality and the unseen realm, I highly recommend this conversation with Mitchell. I think it would be really helpful.
Yeah.
And so we're just going to pick it right up here next time, where we uncover what finally broke the deception.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
See ya.